Hello, family. Welcome to Stories with Pablo. Please subscribe and leave us a like. It means a lot to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for doing so. Episode 2. The adventure continues as Amadou and Célestine strive to break free from the chains of slavery while fighting for their love. Experience every thrilling moment by staying tuned into Stories with Pablo. Chapter 5. Betrayal in the Shadows. The fugitives had come so far, their bodies battered and spirits tested, yet their hope remained unbroken. Each day, they moved farther from the plantation, deeper into the unknown, guided by the fragile promise of freedom. But the path was treacherous, and the shadows that followed them were longer and darker than ever. The forest was thick and alive, a maze of twisting roots and tangled vines. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers, but beneath the beauty lurked danger. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down their spines. They knew they were being hunted. Amadou led the group with steady determination, his arm never leaving Célestine's side. The carved wooden bird she had given him swung gently against his chest, a symbol of the love and hope that sustained them. Behind them, Jacques and Marie kept watch, their eyes sharp and wary. But not all hearts were true. Pierre, the young man whose jealousy had once betrayed Amadou and Célestine to the overseer, had followed them into the forest. His envy had festered into bitterness, and he saw an opportunity to win favor with the plantation's men once more. One evening, as the group settled near a stream to rest, Pierre slipped away under the cover of darkness. His footsteps were light but determined as he made his way toward the faint glow of torches in the distance, the patrol searching for the escapees. "Please," Pierre whispered to the men, his voice low and urgent. "I know where they are hiding. I can lead you to them." The men exchanged glances, suspicion and greed flickering in their eyes. But the promise of capturing the runaways was too tempting to ignore. Back at the camp, the fugitives huddled close, unaware of the betrayal that had sealed their fate. Célestine's eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but she refused to sleep. Her heart ached with the weight of their journey and the fear that freedom was slipping through their fingers. Amadou sat beside her, his hand warm and steady. "We are close," he whispered. "We must keep going." Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of shouting and barking dogs. Torches flickered through the trees as the patrols closed in. "Run!" Jack shouted, grabbing a makeshift spear. Chaos erupted as the fugitives scattered, branches whipping their faces, roots threatening to trip them. Amadou pulled Célestine close, shielding her as they fled through the underbrush. The dogs' baying grew louder, the men's curses sharp and cruel. They ran blindly, desperation fueling their flight. But the forest was unforgiving. Célestine stumbled, her ankle twisting painfully. Amadou caught her before she fell, his heart pounding with fear. "We can't stop," he urged, lifting her into his arms. Behind them, the patrols closed the net. One by one, the fugitives were caught or forced to surrender. The night was filled with cries of pain and despair. Amadou fought fiercely, but the odds were against him. He was dragged back to the plantation, chains biting into his wrists. Célestine's scream echoed in his ears as they were torn apart once more. In the days that followed, the plantation was a place of darkness and punishment. Amadou's body bore fresh wounds, but his spirit remained unbroken. Célestine, bruised and broken, vowed to never give up. The betrayal had shattered their hopes, but it had not destroyed their love. Chapter 6. Across the Water. The fugitive journey through the forest brought them to the edge of Martinique's rugged northern coast, where the land fell away to rocky shores in the restless Caribbean Sea. Here, the trees thinned and the salt air mingled with the scent of wildflowers. For a moment, Amadou, Célestine, Jacques, Marie, and the others stood in awe, staring at the endless blue horizon. Freedom lay somewhere beyond that water, but so did new dangers. Jacques, who had once worked loading ships in St. Pierre, crouched behind a tangle of sea grapes and pointed north. "Dominica is there," he whispered. "If we reach it, we are beyond the reach of French slave catchers. But the sea is treacherous, and the patrols are many." Marie's voice trembled. "How can we cross? We have nothing but our hands." Amadou squeezed Célestine's hand. "We will find a way. We have come this far." That night, They hid among the rocks, listening to the distant crash of waves and the occasional shout from a patrol on the sand. The coast was alive with secrets, smugglers, fishermen, and, sometimes, unknown agents who traded information and helped fugitives slip away in exchange for whatever valuables could be spared. 5. Word had spread among the enslaved that these agents, often free men of color or even sailors from other islands, sometimes aided those desperate enough to risk the crossing. At dawn, Jack spotted a small canoe pulled up beyond a spit of rocks. They waited until the fisherman who owned it came ashore, then approached him with trembling hands and desperate hope. He was an older man, his skin weathered by sun and salt, his eyes weary but not unkind. "Please," Jack begged, "help us cross the Dominica. We have nothing but our labor and our prayers." The fisherman hesitated, glancing up and down the empty beach. He knew the risks. French patrols punished anyone caught helping runaways. Yet, as he looked at the weary faces before him, something shifted in his gaze. "I have heard stories," he said quietly. "Stories of people who made it across. If you are caught, you will be sent back, or worse. But if you trust me, and if the sea is kind, I will take you tonight." Relief and fear mingled in the group's eyes. They spent the day hidden in a thicket above the cove, hearts pounding each time a patrol passed. Célestine whispered prayers, her fingers wrapped around the wooden bird Amadou had given her. As night fell, the fisherman led them to the canoe. The fugitives climbed in, huddled together as the old man pushed the boat into the surf. The sea was dark and choppy, the wind sharp. Every splash and creak sounded like a shout. For hours, they rowed in silence, muscles burning, nerves raw. The fishermen guided them by the stars, avoiding the main shipping lanes where patrol boats might lurk. 5. The crossing was perilous. Waves threatened to swamp the canoe, and the fear of discovery was constant. At last, as the first gray lights of dawn touched the sky, they saw the green hills of Dominica rising from the mist. Exhausted but elated, they stumbled ashore, collapsing on the sand. For a moment, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the gentle lap of waves. But freedom in Dominica was not simple. British authorities, uncertain how to handle fugitives from French colonies, sometimes offered protection, but sometimes held escapees in custody, unsure if the law would shield or return them. 3. Amadou and the others found themselves at the mercy of a new system, one that offered hope, but also uncertainty. In a small village, they were taken in by free black families who had once been enslaved themselves. They learned that the struggle for freedom did not end with escape. It was a daily fight for recognition, for work, and for safety in a world where borders and laws could shift overnight. 3. For Amadou and Célestine, the journey had changed them. The pain of loss and the scars of hardship remained, but so did the love that had carried them across fields, forests, and now the sea. Together, they faced the uncertain dawn, determined to build a new life, one not defined by chains, but by the courage to seek freedom, no matter the cost. Continue to Chapter 7. Chapter 7, New Beginnings and Lingering Shadows. The salty breeze carried whispers of freedom as Amadou and Célestine stepped onto the shores of Dominica, their bodies weary but their spirits ignited by hope. The island's lush green hills rose majestically before them, a stark contrast to the brutal fields they had fled. They were beyond the immediate grasp of the French overseers, yet the journey toward true freedom was only beginning. The small fishing village that welcomed them was alive with a vibrant hum of daily life, children's laughter mingling with the rhythmic pounding of drums, women weaving baskets, and men mending nets by the shore. Free black families, many former slaves themselves, had carved out a fragile sanctuary on this island, and they greeted the newcomers with cautious warmth. Mom and Elise's words echoed in Amadou's mind. Freedom is not given, it is taken and guarded with courage. The community here understood that truth intimately. A tall, broad-shouldered man named Samuel took them under his wing. His skin was a deep brown of fertile earth, his eyes sharp but kind. He had once been enslaved himself and had escaped years before, building a life here through hard work and resilience. "You are safe here," Samuel assured them. "But safety is fragile. You must learn to live in the shadows and the light." Amadou and Célestine found shelter in a small hut near the village's edge. The walls were made of woven palm leaves, the floor cool beneath their feet. It was humble, but it was theirs, an unspoken promise of a new life. Days turned into weeks as they adapted to their new surroundings. Amadou worked alongside Samuel and other men, learning the rhythms of fishing and farming. Célestine joined the women, weaving baskets and tending to the communal garden. Their hands, once callous from cane cutting and digging tunnels, now crafted tools of survival and hope. Yet, the scars of their past lingered. Nights were haunted by dreams of chains and whips, of the betrayal that had nearly ended their journey. Célestine often awoke trembling, clutching the wooden bird tightly to her chest. Amadou comforted her, whispering, "We are free now. We have each other." But freedom was not without its challenges. The colonial authorities in Dominica were wary of runaway slaves, uncertain whether to offer protection or return them to their masters. Rumors of bounty hunters and slave catchers circulated, keeping the community vigilant. One afternoon, as Amadou returned from the fields, he found the village gathered around a fire, faces tense. A messenger had arrived with news. A group of armed men had been spotted along the coast, searching for runaway slaves. Fear rippled through the community, but so did determination. Samuel stood tall, rallying the villagers. "We will protect our own. We have fought too hard to be torn apart now." Amadou and Célestine joined the preparations, helping to fortify the village and organize watches. The wooden bird around Amadou's neck seemed to pulse with renewed strength, a symbol not only of love but of the resilience of their people. In the quiet moment between work and worry, Amadou and Célestine dreamed aloud of a future where their children would never know chains, where love was not a secret but a celebration. Their journey had been long and fraught with pain. But here, on this island of hope and struggle, they began to build a life that was truly their own. Chapter 8. Trials of Freedom. The sun rose over the village in Dominica, casting golden light on the palm trees and the turquoise sea beyond. Life in the village had settled into a rhythm of hard work and cautious joy. Amadou and Célestine woke each morning to the sounds of children playing and fishermen preparing their boats. The air was filled with the scent of salt, earth, and blooming hibiscus. Yet beneath this fragile peace, the shadows of their past lingered. The threat of bounty hunters and colonial patrols was never far, and the villagers remained vigilant. Freedom, they had learned, was not a destination but a constant struggle. Amadou rose early each day, joining Samuel and the other men in tending the fields and repairing fishing nets. His hands, once accustomed to the heavy machete, now learned the delicate art of weaving and planting. The work was honest and exhausting, but it was theirs. Célestine's days were filled with tending the communal garden, cooking, and teaching the children songs and stories from their homeland. Her laughter, once rare and guarded, began to bloom like the flowers she nurtured. Despite the hard work, the scars of slavery were not easily healed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, Célestine sat by the fire, her hands trembling as she carved a new wooden bird. The old one, given to Amadou long ago, had been lost during their flight. Amadou sat beside her, his eyes soft with understanding. "It is beautiful," he said, "a new beginning." But peace was shattered when a group of armed men arrived at the village's edge. Their faces were hard, eyes cold. They bore the insignia of colonial authorities, and their leader carried a list of names. Samuel stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "We are free people. You have no right here." The men ignored him, demanding to search the village for runaways. The villagers stood together, refusing entry. Tensions rose, words were exchanged, and the threat of violence hung heavy in the air. Amadou's heart pounded. He looked to Célestine, who met his gaze with fierce determination. They would not be taken back. Not now. Not ever. The standoff lasted hours, but the villagers' unity and courage forced the men to retreat. For now. The threat, however, remained. In the days that followed, the village fortified its defenses. Watchmen patrolled the perimeter, and everyone learned to move quietly and swiftly. Amadou and Célestine trained with others, preparing for the possibility of attack. Yet, amid the fear, moments of joy persisted. Children danced around the fire, elders told stories of resilience, and the community celebrated small victories, harvests, births, and the simple act of waking free each morning. One night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, Amadou and Célestine sat together on a hill overlooking the village. The wooden bird, newly carved and smooth in Amadou's hand, caught the moonlight. "We have come so far," Célestine whispered, "and yet the road ahead is still long." Amadou nodded. "But we walk it together, and that makes all the difference." Their love, forged in the fires of hardship and escape, was now a beacon, not just for themselves, but for all who dreamed of freedom. Chapter 9. Gardens of Hope. Dominica's mountains rose like emerald guardians around the small village where Amadou and Célestine had found refuge. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and earth, and the calls of birds echoed through the valleys. Hey, in this new land, freedom was real but never simple. The community that welcomed them was made up of people like themselves, runaways, freedmen, and the descendants of those who had survived the crossing from Africa. Some, like Samuel, had bought their freedom by selling produce at Sunday markets, a practice unique to Dominica's plantations, where slaves were often allowed small gardens and livestock of their own. These gardens had been a lifeline, a way to earn coins, build dignity, and sometimes to purchase liberty itself won. Amadou and Célestine learned to work their own plot of land, coaxing cassava, yams, and okra from the rich volcanic soil. The work was hard, but it was theirs. Each morning, Amadou would rise before the sun, his hands rough but steady as he turned the earth. Célestine, her laughter returning, tended to the chickens and goats that roamed freely and traded with neighbors at the bustling Sunday market. The market was more than a place of commerce. It was a gathering of stories, songs, and whispered news from distant plantations and towns won. Still, the shadow of slavery lingered. The British authorities, wary of the growing power of free black communities, sometimes sent patrols to monitor the villages. News of uprisings and maroon resistance in the hills reached them, and the elders told stories of the Maroons, runaways who had fought for their freedom and carved out their own societies in the wilds. 1-5. One day, as Amadou returned from the market, he found Célestine sitting in the garden, her hands in the soil, tears on her cheeks. "I heard from a woman at the market," she whispered. "They say the overseer is still searching. He has offered a reward." Amadou knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "We are not alone," he said. "This land is full of people who have survived worse. We have each other, and we have this earth." The seasons turned. The village grew, and so did their family. First a son, then a daughter, both with Amadou's strong features and Célestine's gentle eyes. The children learned to speak Creole, the Creole of Dominica, and ran barefoot through the gardens, their laughter a song of freedom. 5. But there were trials. Droughts threatened the crops. A fever swept through the village one wet season, taking the old and the very young. Through it all, Amadou and Célestine stood together, their love a shield against the world. On the anniversary of their escape, the village gathered for a feast. Elders told stories of the old days, of the first markets, the first gardens, the first coins saved for freedom. Amadou stood and spoke, his voice steady. "We are proof that love and hope can grow even in the hardest soil. We are the children of survivors, and our children will know only freedom." The firelight flickered in Célestine's eyes as she pressed a wooden bird into their daughter's hand. "Never trade the love of a slave," she whispered, "for it is the seed of all that is good and free." And so, in the gardens of Dominica, among the people who had made freedom their own, Amadou and Célestine's story became part of the island's living memory, a tale of heartbreak, endurance, and the unbreakable power of love. Chapter 10. The Circle Widens. The years in Dominica brought both peace and challenge for Amadou, Célestine, and their growing family. Their children, Kofi and Mireille, grew strong and curious, their laughter echoing through the gardens and along the market paths. The village thrived, its people bound together by the memory of chains and the daily work of freedom. But the world beyond their mountain sanctuary was restless. News reached the village of uprisings, revolutions, and the shifting tides of colonial power throughout the Caribbean. Some spoke in hushed tones of the Black Republic of Haiti, where, after years of bloodshed, Dessalines and Christophe had proclaimed independence of the people of Saint-Domingue, tearing away the frightful veil of prejudice and vowing never to yield their rights again. 1. The stories inspired and unsettled the villages in equal measure, proof that freedom could be seized, but also a reminder that it must be guarded fiercely. Amadou listened to these tales with a heavy heart. He saw in the eyes of his children a hope he had never dared to claim for himself. "We are free," he told them, "but we must always remember those who are not. Our freedom is not complete until all are free." The Sunday markets became a crossroads of the African diaspora. Traders and travelers brought news from the French and Spanish islands, from the British colonies, and from the mainland. Some were newly arrived runaways, others were free men and women who had come to Dominica seeking a place to build anew. The Samana Peninsula, they heard, was becoming a refuge for black migrants fleeing slavery, a crossroads of cultures and dreams. 4. Célestine, now a respected healer and midwife, became a pillar of the community. She taught the younger women how to tend gardens, how to treat fevers, and how to carve the small wooden birds that had become a symbol of hope. She told her children and the village youth the story of her and Amadou's escape, not just as a tale of suffering, but as a lesson in courage, love, and the power of unity. But not all was easy. The memory of betrayal lingered, and the threat of bounty hunters or colonial patrols never vanished completely. Sometimes, strangers appeared at the market, asking too many questions. At such times, the village would close ranks, hiding those most vulnerable, sending the children to the hills until the danger passed. One rainy season, a group of new arrivals came to the village. 3 women and 2 men, their clothes ragged, their eyes haunted. They had fled a plantation in Guadeloupe, crossing by night in a stolen boat. The villagers welcomed them, sharing food and shelter, and listening to their stories. Kofi, now a young man, helped them build a new hut, while Mireille brought them water and sang songs to soothe their fears. Amadou saw himself in these newcomers, their exhaustion, their hope, their disbelief at finally being safe. He gathered the village one evening and spoke. "We are all part of the same story. Each time we welcome a new soul, our circle widens, and our freedom grows stronger." That night, as the rain drummed on the thatched roofs, Célestine pressed a wooden bird into the hand of the youngest of the newcomers, a girl no older than Mireille. "This is for you," she said softly. "Let it remind you that you are never alone." The next morning, the village awoke to a rainbow arching over the mountains, a sign, the elders said, that the ancestors watched over them. Life went on. Gardens were tended. Children learned to read and write, and the story of Amadou and Célestine became a cherished legend, passed from one generation to the next. In the evenings, as the family gathered beneath the great breadfruit tree, Amadou would tell his children, "Never trade the love of a slave, for it is the root of all freedom." And as the stars wheeled overhead, the circle of hope, struggle, and love continued, unbroken, ever widening, and forever free. Hello, family. The saga of Amadou and Célestine unfolds further as they confront fresh perils and obstacles in their relentless quest for freedom and love. Dive into every heart-pounding moment. Join us on Stories with Pablo and watch episode 3 now, only on the channel.